This is the second interview for the Vietnam Veterans Oral History Project 2025 in commemoration of the 50th year anniversary of the end of the Vietnam conflict. Today we're joined by Robert Rowe, goes by the name of Bob, Sergeant in United States Marine Corps, years of service 1963 to 1967. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, you're quite welcome.
Where were you born, and how many siblings did you have?
I was born in Statesville, North Carolina, September 24, 1943, and I had a brother, and I still have a sister. My brother's passed on. And what else did you want to know about that?
What were your parents like? What did they do for a living?
My parents were Glenn and Jane Rowe. My mother was a Yoder before she was married, and part of the Yoder family of Catawba County, which is quite famous actually. And my dad was a part of the Rowe clan and both of those clans or families moved into North Carolina from Pennsylvania, which came from Germany. Our background is German. My dad was he was a great guy. He did all kinds of work. When I was a baby, he was in the Coast Guard during World War II. And because of that, he and my mom didn't really able to live together for a long period of time. I'll tell you more about my dad in a little bit. My mother and I went to live with my grandparents on her side of the family. And so I had quite of a adventurous babyhood that I know really nothing more about than that, but what I've been told. But my mom was a great mother. She for a long period of time, she was just a housewife and a mom. But as time went on and the economy got worse, she went to work. My dad, when he got out of the Coast Guard, went to work for Greyhound Bus as a driver, and we lived in Charlotte at that time. And when I first got started in the first grade, my other grandfather on the Rowe side had started a hardware store in Conover. And so Dad left the Greyhound employment, came up and worked with his father. And so we lived in Conover all of my childhood and boyhood and up into my teens life until I went into the Marine Corps, actually. But my dad helped my grandfather, and he also managed a paint crew. The company was called General Hardware and Paint Company, and my dad managed the paint side, and he had a crew, and they went out and painted houses and things like that. Later on, after the store closed and my grandfather passed away, my dad went to work for a trucking outfit, and he drove some and he managed some. And my dad was a member of the Masonic Lodge in Conover, member of Trinity United Church of Christ, and my mom too. My mother worked for several people. She worked for Newton Manufacturing Company. She worked for some other places too. I can't remember all of the names. But they both worked hard, but they were both very, very family oriented. My brother Mike, myself, my sister Becky, we had a good childhood growing up, and they took very good care of us, cared for us like just wonderfully. And am I leaving anything out or anything else you want to say? Let me say it. And maybe I'm saying too much. I don't know.
No, just whatever you want to say. So you did go into this a little bit. You said your dad was in the Coast Guard. Were any of your other family members part of the military?
Well, my grandfather on my mother's side he went to France during World War I. So yes, he was in the Army. My dad was actually in the Army for a while. Then he went into the Coast Guard. My son has been in the military, and he's been in the Marine Corps. He's been in the Navy Reserve and the Army Reserve. He told me that the Air Force wouldn't have him. I don't know if that's probably not true, but anyway, he tried to get in all of them almost. But he served, my son served in Iraq, and he actually got wounded there, and he's carrying a piece of shrapnel right now in his neck. So, and then I've got a grandson that's, you have probably heard of him, Harlan. He's in the Marine Corps right now and doing a great job. He's married. Let's see. Other family members. Oh, I've got a nephew that was in the Army, my sister's son. That's about it.
What were your first thoughts about the Vietnam conflict, and did those differ from your family and friends?
Well, I'll tell you what. When I went into the Marine Corps, it wasn't because of the Vietnam conflict. At the time, they had the Cuban Missile Crisis. President Kennedy really went to bat for our country and had the Russians remove the missiles in Cuba. And during that time, I was senior in high school, then got out of high school. I was going on to what's now CVCC, and after that, I went to Lenore Ryan for a while. But anyway, during that time, I was thinking maybe the military is the right thing. It wasn't because of Vietnam. Vietnam was kind of in those days. It was in the background. France had gone in there and tried to do some things. They failed miserably. So President Key asked the United States, "Can you come help us? We're being overrun by the North." And so we went in. I don't think we went in with all the right reasons, and I'll explain that later. But we went in for good reasons to help them to thwart the invasions from the North. And there was a lot of what they call the Viet Cong. They were North Vietnamese. They were kind of siding with them, although they were South Vietnamese. They were against the regular government, so they would attack, and whoever was out there trying to clean up the mess. So when, am I getting ahead of myself? Okay. Because what you would ask is, what did I think of it? Very little at first. Now, and we'll get into some training, and I'll tell you why I got into Vietnam. But at first, there wasn't that much thought. It was, America was always on the side of people who wanted to have a republic. And so that's what the South Vietnamese government was trying to have and tried to do a good job. And they were having a lot of trouble doing that, so they asked for our help. That's kind of the first things I knew about the Vietnam conflict.
Did you enlist?
I did.
Excellent. When did you enlist, and why did you decide to enlist?
I enlisted December 1962. I was a student at Lenore Ryan College. I mentioned a while ago I'd gone to CVCC, which was called Catawba County Industrial Education Center at the time. And I went for 2 years there. I had a great education. I learned auto mechanics and worked in auto mechanics for a long time too. But my mom said, "Son, you really need to get a college education." "Okay, Mom." So I went to Lenore Ryan, and I took subjects that just tore me up. I took German, and the teacher was, he could speak great German, but he couldn't explain it very well, at least to me. And anyway, what I was going to say is, during that, I went a semester at Lenore Ryan, and I was so tired of school. I just can't do this right now. So I was dating a girl who's now my wife, and we were high school friends. Sweethearts, went steady. And her brothers had been in the Marine Corps, and so she was just bragging about the Marine Corps. And I said, that's probably not where I want to go. That's for the tough guys. I'm not a tough guy. So I decided I'd go down and see the Army recruiter. And at the time, the recruiters were in a second story of one of the downtown buildings, not real fancy like they are today. So I went up there, and the Army recruiter was gone. And I was standing outside the door, and I heard a voice down the hall saying, "Hey, boy, you looking for me?" It was a Marine recruiter. He said, "Come on down, let's talk." So I went, "Okay, I'll go talk to you." And he gave me a battery of tests. He said, "You know what? You would make a good Marine, and I tell you what I can guarantee you is if you come in the Marine Corps, I can guarantee you'll go into an aviation field." And I thought, hey, that sounds pretty good. I know auto mechanics. Maybe I could work on airplane mechanics. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. And so this was December of 1962. So that's the first time I actually signed up. I didn't go in until they call it a delayed entry. So in March of the next year, 63, I actually went to boot camp. So how did I enlist? I hated school. I didn't really hate school. I just was tired of studying and everything, and it was just more than I could handle at the time. So I said, it's time for me to get in the military. Susan, you hear all this? She's heard it.
What were your family and friends' reactions to you enlisting?
No, they were proud of me. They thought that was a good idea. And a lot of guys were going into the military at that time. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like I was an oddball or something.
Did it change any of your relationships with them?
Not really.
Not really?
It did. It caused me and my girlfriend to be separated for a little while. And, of course, my parents, too. So, but, yeah, it didn't cause any conflict with our family situation at all.
What was leaving to go to training like, and where was your basic training?
Basic training for everybody who goes into the Marine Corps east of the Mississippi River is at Parris Island, South Carolina. Wonderful place. Don't go unless you have to. No, actually, it's a great training place. It really is. I owe a lot to my basic training. But what else did you say at Parris Island, South Carolina? What else?
What was leaving to go to training like? Like the day you left, what were you feeling?
Feeling great. Had a long bus ride to get to Parris Island. First stopped at the induction center in Charlotte and did my swearing in and all this kind of thing. And then as the bus left Charlotte, it was not even half full. By the time we got to Parris Island, the bus was full. We stopped along the way and picked up other recruits on the way. They had this planned out really well,
What do you remember about your first day, and how did you feel?
First day, Parris Island. The bus stopped at the what did they call that? The receiving barracks. And this guy jumps on the bus and he screams at everybody, "Stand up! Get out of here! Go, 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 go!" This is Marine Corps. And so it was kind of scary there for a while. And so we got off the bus, we went into the receiving and sat there. Sat for hours. Couldn't talk, couldn't move, just sat there. That was the first day.
How were the people around you, and were you able to make friends quickly?
Like I was telling you, in the Marine Corps boot camp, you weren't even supposed to talk to each other. It was you were to listen to your And you said what was the instructors called? That was a question you're going to ask in a little while. They're called drill instructors in the Marine Corps. No other service calls them that. There's drill sergeants and all kinds of other, but the Marine Corps calls them drill instructors, and there's a good reason for that. But you were to only talk if you were talked to by a drill instructor. You could approach a drill instructor and you could say to him, "Sir, Private Rowell requests permission to talk to the drill instructor," and he'd say, "Talk." You'd say what you had to say. But talking to other people, even we had double-decker bunks, and I was on the top bunk and the guy on the bottom bunk, I wasn't even allowed to talk to him. We did occasionally, but we weren't supposed to. So it was a very disciplined time there, and you did what you were told. If you didn't do what you were told, you were in trouble. First thing they'd do is call you, say, "Get down and give me 50 push-ups for any infraction." So that was hard enough. And if you kept on, the drill instructors were told you are not to strike a recruit. Some of them didn't listen too well. But anyway, as far as making friends, there were a couple of guys that I did know a little bit. One of them's name was I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Sergeant. And they called him Private Sergeant. And he was there. He was in the Marine Corps because a judge gave him this choice. He says, "You can either go to jail or go in the Marine Corps." He chose the Marine Corps. I think he probably wished he'd gone to jail. It'd been easier. But anyway, we had a few contacts like that. There were, on the QT. It wasn't supposed to happen, but you know how people are. So didn't make a whole lot of friends, but we knew each other a little.
What was your daily routine in training, and was it difficult to adjust to?
Of course it was. 0500, that's 5 o'clock in the morning, was Reveille. That's when you got up. And you got up quickly, too, because the drill instructor came in, and he took a baton, and he took this trash can, big old metal trash can, just rung it around there. It just made all kinds of noise and woke you up and yelled and screamed at you. And you got up, and you got dressed quickly, and you stood in front of your rack, is what we call a bed. Anything you sleep on in the Marine Corps is called a rack. Okay. And so you stood in front of your rack and you stood at attention and you waited for further orders. Now, after that, how far do you want me to go as far as it?
Just your average day in basic training.
Okay. Then the first thing you did, you went outside and did PT. You would run, you do push-ups, do whatever the drill instructor told you to do. And then you would march to the mess hall. That's where you ate. So you went into the mess hall. You stood at attention around the table until the drill instructor said, "Ready, seats," and you all sat down together. If you didn't sit down together, you'd say, "Stand up, do it again." It was pretty rugged. But anyway, we had breakfast, and then we had to, we didn't get served. You went around and to the place where you got your breakfast, and you had a silver tray. You didn't have plates. And so you got your food, you sat down, you ate, and everybody got up together, took their trays into the scullery to have them clean. And then you went out and you did more PT. And then you marched. And then you may have had some training. There was a lot of training that was going on that was, I won't say academic, but at least you were sitting down and learning things from a book. Each Marine had a book called Guidebook for Marines, and you studied that book religiously, and you learned what was in there. And it taught you all about the Marine Corps. It taught you about what to expect, how things work, how a rifle works, just anything about the Marine Corps. And they had instructors that would teach some of these things. So you would have training. Lunch, of course, was kind of like breakfast, went through the same routine there. In the afternoons, more PT, more training. And so about time for the evening meal, after that was over, we went back. We had what was called DI time. And there was 72 of us in our squadron. That's aviation term. In our platoon. And so we would all gather around in the middle of squad bay. That was the area where we had our bunks and everything. And he would talk to us about different things, what we were doing wrong, what we were doing right, what he expected, and all this kind of thing. That was DI time. After that, we had some free time. We had 1 hour, and we could write letters home. But what you really did during that time is you straightened up all the stuff that you had in your rack area, and we had a foot locker that we kept everything in. That's all we had. So you straightened out everything, got ready for the next day. And after that, if you had time to write letters and stuff, you could. And then it was time for taps for go to bed.
What was the hardest and the easiest part of training for you?
Hardest part was not being so upset with the discipline. I learned discipline really well there. The easiest part was marching. I had been in the high school band, and we marched a lot there, so it wasn't really difficult to learn how to keep in step and things like that. And then I don't know if you're going to get to more. I know you talk about more training, and I'll wait for that. But yeah, the discipline was hard, but we learned it, and we learned it quickly. So yeah, that was important. And I'll tell you why. If you're in combat and your squad leader tells you, when I say go, I want you to run out 4 steps, throw the grenade, and hit the deck. And if you don't do it just like he said, you could get killed and your buddies could get killed. So you do it right. That's the discipline. That's why it's there. It's not to create havoc. It's to create style. It's to create obedience. It's to create doing it right. So that's why it's so important that the discipline takes place. But it's hard, especially when you're coming out of civilian life and you're not used to it. But we were there for 13 weeks. And by the time we got out of there, we were disciplined. So it was hard, but it was absolutely incredibly important to have it. Hope that helps.
How often did you exchange letters to loved ones back home?
As often as I could. I told you I had a sweetheart. She's now my wife. We would write a lot. And I'd write to my mom, dad, wrote to my grandparents, and all of them wrote back to me. We had a lot of mail in those days. But we part of that, I told you we had a little free time at the end of the day. And you just, you felt like, I just got to write, tell people what's going on. And you didn't tell them all the bad stuff. You didn't want them to worry about you, things like that. So you would tell them, oh, yeah, it's going great. You're the tears coming out your eyes. But no, it was great to receive letters. It was absolutely wonderful to receive letters. And we're going to talk about Vietnam too. And that's when the letters really, really helped. But all the time, every time you got mail, it was great.
When did you find out you were being shipped overseas?
Well, what happened was you didn't ask me about further training.
Yeah, well, further specialized training did you,
yeah,
before you received your orders?
Well, after boot camp, all Marines go through infantry training. If you're on the East Coast, that takes place at Camp Lejeune. Mm-hmm. And you learn basic. In the Marine Corps, I don't care what your job specialty is. That's called MOS, Military Occupational Specialty. It doesn't matter what your MOS is. You are always considered an infantryman or woman. And when I was in, the ladies didn't do much of that. Today, man, they're trained like the guys. I've got a grandson. I told you about Harlan. You know Harlan. He's got a lovely wife. And Talia has shot expert rifle, and she knows how to do hand-to-hand combat. And I would be afraid to tackle with her any day because I'm getting old. but what I'm saying is, when I was in, the ladies were there for, they would do like office work or things like that. They were not out in the field like we were. And now, man, they fly airplanes. They're out in the infantry. I mean, they're just as good as the guys. And I hate to say that because it makes me kind of cringe. But the ladies are out there just like the guys, doing the same thing the guys do. I don't quite agree with it because I'm an old and I'm set in my ways. But, I think ladies' place is not to be in the infantry. But that's my opinion. But they are, and they're good at what they do. So that's just the way it is. But when I was in, that wasn't the way it was. So the guys went to infantry training after boot camp, and you learn all those skills that you need to know. We went out on bivouacs and all kinds of stuff. We played war games, all this kind of thing. And then after that was called, in our day, it was called ITR, Infantry Training Regiment. They call it MCT now, Marine Combat Training. But after that, I went on leave for a while. I got to come home for the first time, which was really great. And then I told you when I got recruited, the guy said, you can get an aviation. I'll make sure that's what they're sending you. And so they did. They sent me to training in a little town called Millington, Tennessee. It's just north of Memphis. And there was a Navy air station there and a Naval Air Technical Training Center. And that's where I learned electronics. Now, when I was interviewed, there was a sergeant major, and he said, well, what kind of school do you want to go into? And I said, sir, I have learned auto mechanics. I would like to go either to jet engine school or helicopter maintenance school. He said, you would. He said, according to these tests that we've given, you'd be good in electronics. I said, sir, I don't know one thing about electronics. I said, but I would love to go into one of those mechanics schools. He said, yeah, I can't change your mind. I said, no, sir, I really would like to do that. So the assignments came out the next day. It was electronics school. Best thing that ever happened to me. Best thing that ever happened to me. So I was in electronics school for a long time. Started in October of '63 and got out in April of '64. And I learned electronics, and I learned it fairly well. And I'm not bragging, but I was fairly good at it. And I'll have to tell you this too. Learning electronics in those days, you had to learn how to learn it with vacuum tubes and then transistors and all the stuff. You had to learn how to troubleshoot using an oscilloscope and meters and how to solder and how to take care of electronic equipment. And I'm going to jump out. After I left the Marine Corps, I was able to get in computers, and that's exactly what you needed to get into computers in those days, in 1967. And I interviewed in one of the computer companies. They hired me on the same day and sent me to computer school, and I've been in computers until I retired just a few years ago. So it was really, I didn't like the idea of electronics, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me career-wise, because I learned electronics. I learned it well. Did real well with aviation electronics. I worked on radios. I worked on navigation equipment. I worked on the test equipment that checks out that equipment, and did pretty fairly well at it. I told you I made sergeant. That was incredible in those days to make sergeant in your first enlistment. But I'm not bragging. And just that's the way it was. And it's because and okay, I'm getting religious a little bit. It was all his working through all this, in spite of what I wanted, that got me involved in electronics and really brought me to him. But anyway, like I say, that was the training I got after the infantry training, after boot camp and all that kind of stuff. And so after, where are we in the?
So the question was, when did you find out you were being shipped overseas after your specialty training?
Okay. After the training, I was transferred to Cherry Point, North Carolina, to the air base down there. And on the way to Cherry Point, happened to have a little wedding ceremony. So me and my sweetheart are still married today. And she's the result of that, part of it, the result. But anyway, we got married, went to Cherry Point, took this girl right out of high school, never been out of Catawba County, took her to a Marine base, and she grew up quick. But went down there. I was involved in aviation electronics, of course, down at Cherry Point. I was there about a year, a little over a year, and Vietnam was starting to build up. And they needed guys like me over there. So I actually put up my name. Yes, I'd go. It wouldn't have mattered if I'd have said no, I'd still go. But I said, yeah, I'll go. That was hard because we was just married for a year, and but you do what you have to do. So I knew in July of '65 that I would be going to Vietnam. And sure enough, I left Cherry Point in September, and then we had training to do, more training at Camp Pendleton, California, more infantry training. You didn't know what you was going to do when you got there. So your question was, when did I know I was going to do it? I knew it in September of '65.
How did your wife feel about you going to Vietnam?
Well, she understood. She wasn't real happy about it, but she understood and gave her a chance to go back, be with her mom again. And it worked out okay. She was there when I got back. Still had a ring on.
What day did you arrive in Vietnam, and where were you first stationed?
I arrived in Vietnam about a week before Thanksgiving, 1965. And I remember that because we had Thanksgiving dinner in Vietnam that year, and I had just gotten there. And I was, of course, all the Marines went over. You started in Da Nang, and then they shipped you wherever you needed to go. I was sent to Chu Lai. Chu Lai was south of Da Nang. It was about an hour's flight, and we had an air base there. But I was assigned to Marine Air Group 36, which was a helicopter squad, helicopter air group. They had several squadrons, and that was in the Chu Lai region. It was out on sort of a point out there on the South China Sea, and that's where I was for the entire time. I was stationed at Chu Lai the whole time I was in Vietnam.
What were your first thoughts of entering Vietnam?
What in the world have I gotten myself into? I tell you what, your first thoughts are strictly, you getting there, getting settled in, learning where you're at, and all this kind of thing. But it was quite an awakening. In those days, Air Group 36 hadn't been there in Vietnam very long. They had come there from California, from Camp Pendleton area. It was a helicopter unit. And they hadn't been there but just a month or so. So everything was really new. Before I left Vietnam, they had built these nice little huts. They were made of plywood and screen, but they had a roof on them. When I got there, we lived in tents. It was a squad tent of about 12 guys in there. And I don't remember if it was the first or second night I was there, bullets came through our tent. And fortunately, all of us were laying down on our racks. They were little cot things that they had, weren't very comfortable. Those bullets came through and everybody just crawled down on the floor. And then we had some bunkers outside the tents and everybody got in there with their rifles and everything. So it was kind of scary that at first there, because the VC could find their way to different places and they'd just start shooting at you. So it was kind of scary there at first. That didn't last too long. They got that area cleared out, but it was a little bit frightening there for a while.
What was your unit assignment, and when did you find out about it?
I was in headquarters and maintenance squadron 36, and that was the unit that took care of all the electronic equipment and the engines and the actual aircraft itself. So I was in what we call avionics. Avionics is aviation electronics. I was in the avionics unit, and I worked on all that equipment. And they had these vans. They were actually just trailers. And in those trailers, we had test equipment set up, and we had work areas where we could take the equipment apart and fix it, get it back together, and send it back to the squadrons. So, did that answer your question?
Did you have a group of friends
Yes.
in Vietnam?
Yes. We weren't quite so disciplined that we couldn't talk to each other there. Yeah, good friends. Still know some of them. And we did a lot of work together, and had some. You mentioned downtime in some of your things. We actually had some downtime there, but it wasn't much. We had 12-hour shifts, so you get up, you go to work, you get your meals and everything. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and everybody did more than they should have been doing. But it was just part of the nature of the times. So you worked hard all day long, and if that wasn't enough, you probably were on guard duty at night. I'll never forget being on perimeter guard, which was the very outposts of the area. So you were in a bunker there with a machine gun, and you had to be up for 4 hours at a time, So it wasn't all nice. There was a lot of times where there was bad days, but did have friends. Got real good friends there. We worked together, cried together, prayed together, and enjoyed each other's company a lot.
How long were you stationed in country in Vietnam?
I was there 13 months.
Was it difficult to keep in contact with your loved ones back home?
We had mail, so no, it wasn't difficult. I mean, there was no phone calls, but the mail went well. I mean, she got my letters. My mom, dad got their letters. I got their letters. So
Are there any memories or stories about your time there, good or bad, that stood out that you'd like to share?
Well, I know one of the things questions talks about, were you able to go somewhere? We had a staff sergeant who had, there was a family of Vietnamese. There was a little village fairly close to where our unit was. The name of it was Kyha, Kyha, and he found out about a child that was sick, and they didn't know why they couldn't get in. So he arranged for one of our Navy doctors to look at this child, and got him all fixed up and healed and back to normal and everything. And man, they just loved us. And so we were able to go out to Keehaw from time to time, and actually had a cold beer out there. And I don't know how, because they didn't have electricity. I don't know how they did it, but we had cold beer out there, and that was a neat time. There are other memories, of course. I had some flight duty, and what happened was, a guy, two of us, we had plans on how to make a radio relay system. The troops on the ground had FM radio systems that they could talk from their command post to the guys out in the field. But as you're probably familiar, there's a lot of mountainous country in Vietnam. So the communication wasn't that good. So they were hoping, what if we had some kind of a relay system that we could do? So me and another guy found some plans, and we built a relay system that we put into each of it. I was in a headquarters and maintenance squadron. Each HMS squadron had a fixed wing aircraft, and we were a helicopter outfit, but we had a C-117, kind of like a DC-3, if you're familiar with that plane at all. And we used it to, we had test equipment we had to fly into, I forget where it went to, out in the Philippines somewhere, to get it repaired and things like that. And then they would, transport troops if they had to. But we had a fixed wing aircraft, the C-117. So we built this radio relay system, and we installed it in the C-117, and it worked. And I flew with that thing for a while, and we would be up in the air, and the command post would send a message, and it would relay. We had a receiver that it went into, and we relayed it to a transmitter. It went out to the troops, so it gave them a lot better signal than just a direct path. So that was interesting to do that. And let's see. I used to cut hair. I became a barber for guys in our group. The one guy that he'd been there longer than me. He was cutting hair, and he was leaving. So I ordered me a set of barber clippers, and I became the official barber of the avionics crew. I mean, and everybody did something like that, because you didn't have today you go to the barbershop, or you ladies go to have your nails done and stuff like that. You didn't have that over there. It was just basic life. So you did what you could do, and everybody did what they could do to help. I'll never forget, guys were getting, when it was time for them to leave Vietnam, instead of cutting it, Marine Corps, you had what you call, cut that hair all the way off to the scalp, right on here. Well, when they got ready to go home, we'd make it prettier. So they'd look better when they got home. So that was fun. So, and then, there's so much that I could tell you about. But we were busy fixing the electronics for the aircrafts. And we were busy, defending our place and all that. So those are the memories that I've got. There's a lot more, I guess, but you don't hear them all. We'd be here all day and tomorrow too.
What did you do off duty? Was there what was the entertainment in camp?
There wasn't very much. We did have a place we could get a beer every now and then. The best entertainment we ever got was when the Bob Hope show came to July. That was great because he was just he everybody loved Bob Hope back then, and of course he had the pretty girls with him too, and the singers and all the music. That was really great entertainment. So we got to enjoy that um, one time. He did his Christmas show for the troops.
Did you ever get to go on leave?
Yeah, it was called R&R, Rest and Recuperation. I went to Tokyo, Japan. Spent a lot of time in the Sony building. Just it was a huge skyscraper they had built. And while I was there, a Japanese guy came up and he could speak English. He said, "Are you having fun?" I said, "Yeah, this is great." He said, "Would you like to see some sights around here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I was in the United States and they treated me so well. I was determined that when I got back to Japan, if I found an American, I was going to help him have a good time." So he took me around the places I'd have never gotten to. So I did have that was a week long time in Tokyo, Japan, and got to see a lot of sights and really enjoyed the time away from Vietnam. Yeah.
What did it feel like coming back from leave into Vietnam?
Oh, nothing different. I knew what I was heading back to, so feelings is just no different feelings.
What was your rotation home like?
It was great. First of all, I didn't get to come home till January, and I was scheduled to my 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 enlistment was over with in March, so I got back to the States in January '67, and because I only had a couple of months left, they said, if you want to, you can get out early. Because I'd had some time from December of '62, which was before boot camp, and that counted too. So they let me out when I got back to California. So I called my wife. Yeah, we were married, and told her I was back and everything. I said, "Would you like to catch a plane out here to California? We just look around for a while." It was crazy because she wanted me to come home. So spent about a week there in El Toro, California. That's where they brought us to, and was discharged and flew home, and it was great to be home.
How were you welcomed when you got back?
Wonderfully, yeah. First stop was my mother-in-law's house. That's where my wife was, and so we went in and hugged and kissed, and it was great. And then, of course, seeing my parents again and my grandparents and all that, it was wonderful.
What kept you going while you were overseas? Did you have any photos of loved ones that you kept with you from back home?
Oh yeah, everybody did that.
Who were
Most
your
everybody.
photos of?
Huh?
Who were your photos of?
Of my whole family. I had, and my wife especially.
When and where were you when you learned that you were going home for good?
Well, I knew that when I was still at Chulai. In fact, they told me that in the office there that you'd probably be getting out of the Marine Corps unless you wanted to reenlist. And had it not been for Vietnam, I would have probably made a career out of the Marine Corps. But I knew this was in 1967 I was getting out. The war was still going on fiercely at the time. And I knew if I re-enlisted, I'd be right back to Vietnam. Have to leave my wife again, go through all that again. I just wasn't ready to do that. So, what was your question exactly? What?
When and where were you when you learned you were going home for good?
Yeah, I was in July, and like I say, I had when I was in training and everything before Vietnam, I was ready to make a career out of it. But after Vietnam, I've had enough.
What was your last night in Vietnam like? What were you feeling? What was feeling around the camp?
I remember getting that question, reading that question, and I've been thinking about that. I don't even remember what I was feeling then. I was just overjoyed at the fact that I was finally going to go home.
What was your reaction to learning that America was pulling out of the war when they eventually did?
Okay, now you're going to ask me some questions, or I'm going to give you some answers that I think we did some things wrong as a nation. And here's why. I believe that when you send the troops in and they're getting shot at and killed, by the way, I went over in an airplane, a large airplane, and I came back with the same group I went with, and about half of them weren't on the plane anymore. And I lost a lot of friends over there. I took a flight one time. I told you I was on flight duty for a while. I took a flight from Chulai to Tonsanut Air Force Base way down south, and we carried a plane load of dead people. And I'll tell you what, and where our avionics was, just next door to us was called B Med. It was where the Navy they took in wounded and killed. And I saw truckloads of bodies come through there. And I had that plane load, and we had to fly. It was about a 2-hour flight. We had to open the cargo doors and the hatches just to keep the smell out. It was terrible. And you pick up those bags, and slosh happens. And this is gory. I know, but you got to understand something. I think that if we're going to send people in to that kind of environment, you better go in to win. And I don't like it if they send troops in not to win. Vietnam was a police force. We did as good as we could for what we had to do. And then we pull out and the North takes over. And I say, what in the world were we there for? I lost a lot of friends for that. That ain't good. That is wrong. So my theory is, if you're going to send troops in, send them in to win or don't send them. That's where I stand today.
So, what was being at home like? How are you treated by your friends and family when you came home?
Oh, they thought I was wonderful. No. Everybody was just so glad for me to be home. Yeah, it was great.
So, this one's a little bit dicier. How are you treated by the public?
Well, at first, there was a lot of opposition to the war. Okay, a lot. It wasn't so bad around here. In California, it was terrible. And I had to be in California when I got out. So it was not a pleasant thing to come home and you were treated like dirt. Now, it wasn't like that here. A lot of guys that I know of, they got spit on and abused. And that's just not right. We just were doing what we were supposed to do.
What was your outlook on the future after you got home? Were you hopeful?
Oh yeah, like I told you, they trained me in electronics. I got a job with what's now not is not a company anymore, but it was Sperry Univac in those days. They made the very first computer. If you go into your history in computers, you'll find out like in 1952 when Eisenhower and Stevenson were running together, CBS would say Univac says that this guy is the winner. Anyway, so Univac was one of the it was the first electronic computer, and I went to work for them. They merged. Univac was brought into the Sperry Corporation, so it was Sperry Univac in those days. So I got in on the really early in 1967. They were starting to put computers around here in business, in factories and businesses and things. So I got a good job early on with them, and I stayed in computers the rest of my life until I retired. Different, of course, as time went along. Back in the days when I first learned a computer, it would fit in this room almost. Mm-hmm. And that phone you've got there has more memory than that computer did, mm-hmm. and has got more power than that computer did. But that's what we had back in those days. Of course, they got better and better and smaller and everything else. So, but I had a good career when I got out of the Marine Corps. So, and I attribute my career success, and I did well, to the training I got in the Marine Corps.
Did you receive any meritorious commendations from the service?
I had a meritorious mast, and when I was in Vietnam, I made sergeant in a relatively short time, faster than most. So yeah.
Was it hard to adjust back to civilian life?
No. It was very, very comfortable, very easy, very life changing. It was wonderful.
Were you able to keep in contact with the members you served with?
Some of them, yes. As a matter of fact, we had Ellen and I lived. Let's see, where were we? I can't remember where we were living at the time, but a couple of guys that I had been friends with in Vietnam came up to see us. And then I had another guy who lived in Michigan. We went to see him. And he and his wife had a little boy, and we were good friends with them, and sort of lost touch after a period of time. But yeah, there for a good long while, we were still good friends.
How has service changed you?
I don't know. Ask Susan. I guess my thoughts about, going to war, sending troops in, that's the biggest change. Because I'm very, very adamant about what I believe there. I think too, it has caused me to get closer to God. Not so much while I was there, but after getting back, realizing, hey, I got back. Yeah. I've been involved in church all my civilian life after that, and I'm very glad about that. It's been a great, great place to be. I'll tell you about it in detail if you want to know, but I am very much appreciative of what God and my Savior Jesus have done for me. And so a lot of that comes from having been over
Is there anything you would have done differently?
there. Might have waited, should have waited for that Army recruiter. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
What advice do you wish was given to you when you were enlisted, and what advice would you give to people thinking about enlisting today?
I don't know about advice I would have wanted to hear, but I would tell any young person that had an idea about the military that I think it would be a good idea. I think, and I'm not really into politics or anything like that. I think the military was going in the wrong direction there for a while, but I think it's going in the right direction now. And I think the people we've got in the defense department are doing a good job. I've got a grandson in the military and he's in the Marine Corps, and he's doing a really good job, and I think it's a good place, especially if you're not sure what you want to be involved in. It gives you a sense of purpose, and it gives you a sense of really what should the future look like. And I think it gives you I think it's a good background for most any. It's not for everybody. It is not for everybody, but for the people. And I think my grandson's one of them. My son was one of them. It was the right thing for them to be in the military. So I would advise any young person to consider it. Not necessarily would I say you really should go, but consider it. And that's what advice I would give.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to add, or anything else you would like to share?
I shared a whole lot that you didn't ask. I think I've probably covered all of it. I can't think of anything else.
What do you hope that people will take away or remember from your story?
Oh. I hope that they remember that the military is important, but I hope they will voice their opinion. Don't send them in if they're not gonna go to win.
Is there anything that we should have talked about but didn't?
I can't think of anything.
And the last question is, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
There's a lot of veterans that are homeless. We have groups of veterans organizations. I'm in the Marine Corps League. I'm also in the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars. There's other groups too that are trying their best to take care of these homeless veterans. We have places where they can go get haircuts, and they can get medical help that's provided from these groups. And I would really like for people to know there are out there veterans who need help.
Well, thank you so much for your time and thank you for your service. This concludes our second interview for the Vietnam Veterans Oral History Project 2025.